We're now live.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all members of the public who are watching this Cabinet meeting via the East Suffolk YouTube channel. There is no test of the fire alarm this evening, so if it sounds, please consider it to be real and leave the building by the nearest fire exit and gather at the fire assembly point beside the large Raduna Park structure at the front of the building. Please do not re-enter the building unless we are told it is safe to do so. Please note, we have a new camera system in operation. Two behind me, two to the side, and one to the back. And the viewing experience will be different for those watching online. Members in the room, please be aware that the cameras will move and focus on those speaking. So you need to remember to turn your microphones on, okay? Exempt confidential items. In exceptional circumstances, the Council may, by law, exclude members of the public from all or part of an executive decision-making meeting. Tonight, we have one exempt matter to consider as outlined on the published agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Lorraine, do we have any apologies, please?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Have any Cabinet members any declarations of interest? Not seeing any, thank you. Announcements. Do any members of Cabinet have any announcements? No. Item 4, minutes. We have one set of... Oh, sorry, Councillor Daly.
Just to announce to Cabinet and everybody looking that we did on Friday have our launch event for community energy. Went very well attended. Some very interesting, active, buzzy people there, and I do think it's going to make a big difference in our region. And so I'm very glad that that's started off so well.
And if anybody watching is interested, go onto the East Suffolk website and fill in an expression of interest form. Thank you. Item 4, minutes. We have one set of minutes to approve from the Cabinet meeting held on the 21st of April 2026. Are we in agreement to accept them as a correct record? If so, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Noble, thank you. Seconder? Sorry, Councillor Candy, not Councillor Noble. Councillor Candy was the proposer. Councillor Whitelock was the seconder. All in favour? Thank you. Item 5, referrals from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Dan Cleary, are you online?
I am here. Can you see me?
You are here. So I would like to introduce Councillor Dan Cleary, Vice Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, to report the recommendations from Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 23rd of April 2026 in relation to the report of the Planning Advisory Service. But just before I do that, I would just like to send my best wishes to Councillor Mike Deacon, who is actually the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny and is unwell at the moment, otherwise he would have been here. Thank you, Councillor Cleary.
Right, thank you, Chair. So one of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's functions is to review council services. So the committee was happy to agree to the request to review the Planning Advisory Service report into the way in which the planning committees operate. As you can see from the minute extract, Appendix B, the committee gave detailed consideration to the Cabinet members' report and comments from the East Suffolk Planning Alliance, and heard from the Cabinet member, the Head of Planning and Building Control, and Councillor Ewart, who had requested to speak. The committee was satisfied that no changes needed to be made to what had already been agreed by the Strategic Planning Committee in relation to the PAS recommendations. However, in light of some of the issues raised during the meeting, the committee felt it was necessary to make several additional recommendations that Cabinet is now asked to consider. Number 1, that a specific planning protocol be developed. 2, that members of the planning committee receive annual refresher training. Number 3, that how-to planning guides and videos be created and uploaded to the council's website to provide councillors and members of the public with a greater understanding of the whole of the planning process. For example, whether an application was needed, how to submit an application, what constituted a material consideration, making it clear speakers could only submit unedited or otherwise unmanipulated visual material in advance of any committee meeting, not on the day itself, and also detailing the procedure for a planning committee meeting so as to illustrate the space, layout, and order of the meeting. And finally, 4, that laminated A4 sheets be created detailing how the committee meeting would proceed, including the process for public speaking, and these would be made available in the public gallery during committee meetings so the public were clear on what would happen and at which order. And that ends our recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Councillor Packard, would you like to say anything at this point, please?
I would like to thank Councillor Cleary and his committee. I think we had a very good hearing from them, and the main thing that councillors were worried about is when people come to a planning committee, it's probably the first time they've done so, and so they don't really know how to proceed, or how it works, and so a lot of their recommendations were about planning guides and videos to make it easier for people to understand the process. One of the things that did come up when we had a review of the PAS is that people were bringing photos to the committee on the day where the committee meeting took place, and we felt that over time that had really been not abused, but it wasn't fair. If people have photos they want to bring, then they really should bring them earlier so that they can be put into the system. We are also worried about AI and how people could bring a photo at the last moment, which had been influenced somehow by AI. And so that's quite a relatively new thing. So, those were some of the things that we decided to change. But in general, there was a lot of discussion. In general, I'm happy. The planning officers are happy with these recommendations. And we will start carrying them out as soon as we are able to.
Thank you, Councillor Packard. You actually said PAS, and for those watching that don't know what PAS means, that is the Planning Advisory Service, and they are part of the LGA, which is the Local Government Association, which is our professional body that looks after councils. So we were asked to engage with a planning piece of work, and it's not unusual for councils to do peer work where we are investigated is probably too strong a word, scrutinised, assisted, enabled to add better value maybe to our services, and it's not unusual for councils to do this. In fact, it's actually good practice. We've actually got a housing one coming up, which Heather, the housing officer, has actually asked us to engage with, so it's all good stuff, and it's a scrutiny, and that is what the LGA and the Planning Advisory Service did for us. The recommendations, that planning protocol be developed. I see no problem with us developing a planning protocol. We obviously have local government reorganisation coming up, and we can't put a timeline on this, but I don't see any reason why, in fact, all 4 of the overview and scrutiny's recommendations aren't proceeded with. We need to send this back to the Strategic Planning Committee for their July meeting, because we are actually a stakeholder in this process, and it's actually the Strategic Planning Committee that make the decisions. And I have consulted with the Monitoring Officer, Chris Bing, and he has confirmed that that is the process according to our constitution, that the Strategic Planning Committee actually implement these decisions, but we are a stakeholder and can feed into that process. Just for clarity. Is there any other members in the room? Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Dan, and thank you to the committee for the report and their scrutiny of the PAS report. Could you clarify what the committee mean by a planning protocol? I just want to make sure that we're not thinking different things, because obviously it can mean different things to different people. So if you could just clarify what the committee's interpretation was.
Oh, that's a good question. I think perhaps the head of planning might be better qualified to answer that question.
I'm sorry, Ben. I think Ben Warner is on the line. Are you there, Ben?
Yes, I am. Thanks a lot.
Would you like to come in? Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I think the planning protocol was a recommendation that was made. I mean, to be honest, it was something that we'd already hoped to put in place anyway. It was discussed last year in the Constitution Working Group that the Constitution was quite overly complex in the way that it described planning committee functions, and that we could place that in a much easier to read planning committee guide or protocol. So that's a recommendation we're happy to take forward. We are mindful of how that's implemented over the coming year and a half or so leading into LGR, and making sure that that's useful for its time whilst we are still East Suffolk, but also making sure that it's going to lead into a good practice of protocol and guidance once we evolve into our new unitary councils as well. There are some wider national changes which will be picking up with Strategic Planning Committee at our July meeting, and we may well need to wait for those changes to implement the protocol and guidance. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Thank you, Ben. Because I didn't give you the opportunity to speak earlier when Councillor Packard spoke, is there anything you'd like to add at this point before I ask the rest of the members if they've got any questions?
No, I think Councillor Packard covered it well, as we thoroughly expressed at overview and scrutiny and at Strategic Planning Committee before. I think there's a number of officers and chairs and vice chairs and Councillor Packard who have put a considerable amount of time into the task and finish group, into the whole PAS review process, in making sure that this was a thorough and rigorous review of what we do, and really pleased that it came out with some really positive feedback around how East Suffolk takes forward planning committee decisions, the effort and insights officers put into that as well, and ultimately the PAS review has brought forward improvements on what is a good functioning part of our planning system at the moment.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions from members in the room? Councillor Noble, thank you.
It's not so much a question as a comment, actually, really. I really support these recommendations. I think all of them sound really sensible, really just beneficial to both the public and to members as well. And extra refresher training, laminates to explain to people, because planning is a minefield for a lot of people, and they just, like you say, they come into the room and they just haven't got a clue on the procedures. And yeah, thank you to Scrutiny Committee for doing this and doing it really well, because I think all those recommendations will be really, really positive and useful. Thank you, Chair.
Any other members wish to speak? Oh, sorry, Councillor Langham.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think there's lots of positive suggestions. I'm interested to see how the training pans out, because I think when we all became councillors, we started that initial training, and this is a really complicated subject to train. And I often feel that there are perhaps some ways of looking at that training to prepare people perhaps a little better for how that rolls out, watching some of the applications that have been processed in the last year. I was grateful for incorporating the ESPA PAS review. As you know, I've been involved with ESPA, and I think the discussion and debate around that was very welcome. Thank you very much to the Oversight and Scrutiny. And I think ESPA is also grateful for that forum space and professional engagement with the council, councillors and officers. So thank you very much for that. Yes, so thanks as well to Councillor Packard.
Councillor Landon Morris has just mentioned ESPA. That's the East Suffolk Planning Alliance for anybody that's watching. And since this administration took over the council, we have regular East Suffolk Planning Alliance meetings with the members of ESPA, and Councillor Bevan, I believe, often chairs their annual meeting as well. Councillor Daly, thank you.
Yeah, just to add my voice of support, really. I've been on planning committees ever since I was voted in the by-election about 4 years ago, 4.5, whatever it was. We were in opposition then. And I've watched the way the planning committee involvement has moved and developed over time. And things do change, so that, the planning system changes and our engagement with it changes. And it's so important that we are not only sort of moving and keeping up with things, but we're explicit about that. And I think that's what this is. being very explicit about how we move with the times regarding planning. And I think that's very important.
Councillor Candy?
Thank you, Chair. I don't sit on Planning North or Planning South. I sit on Felixstowe Planning, it's an advisory board. So sitting slightly outside it, it is very confusing, planning. And so I'm really pleased to see that this recommendations are to help the public a little bit more understand the proceeds of how it's done. So I want to thank Councillor Packard for all his help he's done in that, because I'm sure that as Councillor Noble said, when you first arrive in a planning meeting, it's really confusing. So I think it's really important that this has highlighted that, and that we're going to do something about it. So it has my full support.
Councillor Whitelock?
Absolutely, communicating how the process worked is really important, but I also think that managing expectations is important. I think residents believe that if something seems unreasonable to them, it will, and they bring it to planning committee, it won't go through. But actually, of course, it's all about the legal basis, isn't it? And I think that needs to be understood more clearly, and that there are times when planning committee may not want to agree to something, but there isn't a legal basis to deny it, and residents need to understand that, and need to understand the research they need to do in order to flag up anything they're unhappy about. Thank you.
Councillor Packard?
Yeah, well, thanks for all those comments. One of the things that I look at as the cabinet member for planning is the appeals process. And there are appeals on a regular basis. And we look at that on a regular basis, what's happening to those appeals. And in general, we win our appeals. I don't know what the percentage is exactly, but we do win them. And we lose a few too, of course. But that tells me that we are getting it right. Because if we were having appeals and 50% of them were accepted, something would be badly wrong. So we look at those figures on a regular basis, and at the moment, we're really doing well.
That's just opened up a question for me. Thank you, Councillor Packard. Ben, you might need to step in here. I'm sure you're going to know the answer to this, but if you don't know the answer, it's not a disaster, because you can let us know electronically afterwards. How many planning applications roughly does this council have per year? And how many of those actually go to appeal, please?
Oh, you put me on the spot there for some accurate facts.
Oh, come on, don't let me down. I was sure you'd know this question.
I haven't got it prepared in front of me immediately, but we get over 2,000 applications as a council every year. The majority of planning applications are approved, and the majority of planning applications are dealt with as delegated decisions. But as Councillor Packard points out, we do have a great deal of success at the moment on appeals. That's thanks to our relatively up-to-date local plans and the rigorous attention that we give to our decisions. And I think also, we've made some very sound decisions at planning committees over recent years as well. So it's one of those things that we mustn't be complacent on. We do keep in close check of those, and that's a real important function of our strategic planning committee that many councils don't have, that we use strategic planning committee to report on everything that goes on in the planning, build control and energy projects and coastal management services every quarter, review those stats, allow questions and scrutiny on those things, and it works really successfully.
Thank you. You did say that our local plans are relatively up to date, and for those viewing, that is because we need a 5-year land supply, which this council has always had until the government decided last year to increase our housing targets by 83%. So that is why we no longer have a 5-year housing supply. And actually, I believe all the councils in Suffolk, Ben's going to correct me, or Mark will, are all going through the local plan process at the moment for when LGR happens and the 3 unitaries come in all the local plans will be in relatively the same place, so it works across the new unitary authority areas. Would one of you, Mark's going to confirm that? Thank you.
We have started about a year ago regular meetings with the rest of Suffolk, because we knew that the change was going to happen and the unitaries would happen. And so we have unified ourselves within a couple of weeks here and there, so that we all do our local plan together. And we would hope to all have our new local plans finished by the time we are dissolved and LGR and the unitaries happen.
Thank you, Councillor Packard. Any other members of Cabinet wish to speak? Otherwise, Councillor Reeves, you're in the room? No. Okay. Any councillors online? Good evening, Councillor Byatt. How are you?
Good evening, Leader. I'm not with you because I'm suffering from a slightly snotted up face, so you wouldn't want to see me this evening. Can I just ask, before I make a comment, the report from the Planning Advisory Service, is that in the public domain?
Yes, Peter.
In that case, can I just refer your colleagues to, it's page 9 of that report, paragraph 7.5, which is basically the nub of why we had this review in the first place. As I was at that April planning meeting where we had matters raised about the probity of our planning team, I just wanted to endorse our planning team. And I believe that's what this review does, is come up with some ideas, some tweaking, but certainly as Councillor Whitelock said and others, about having things explained perhaps more simply for people sometimes. And that's not the domain of the officers to worry about. It's about councillors and councillors taking on training. And I think this reinforces the need for all councillors to actually have planning training anyway. And if we're going to have regular reviews, that will be even better so that people who slip through the net. But I would say that this report, it shows that our planning department under Ben and his team is working effectively. There are a few things to tweak, but I was really pleased to see this review and the endorsement of what our team does. That's really what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byatt. Any other members online wish to speak? Oh, Councillor Langdon Morris.
This Saturday, I went to see the Community National Emergency Briefing, which was extremely sobering in terms of what we face over the next 20 to 30 years. And I think that planning really needs to think about and incorporate some of the suggestions made by senior experts in our government about the future of what we do to this landscape around us. And that needs to be kept front and foremost. After seeing this film, and many of you have probably seen it, these are coming from our top leadership, and that needs to be thought about very carefully. It's not business as usual anymore. That's it. Thanks.
Any other questions online? Okay. I'd just like to say also that obviously the government is evolving the way that the planning process works, and Councillor Packard or Ben might want to come back in a minute and actually clarify what's about to be said, because this is my muddled way of saying it. But I believe the government are actually pushing for more officer-led planning and less elected member-led planning, which is obviously going to make it less democratic. This is where the government is going. They want planning speeded up. They don't want it slowed down. They want less interference from members of the elected representatives and more getting on with it, which is why they're actually changing the guidelines and tightening it up. Now, Ben, you can say this much more eloquently than what I just have. Would you like to just explain that again in layman's terms?
Yes, no, thanks for raising that. So this is going to be an area where we'll be working closely with members over the next few months. So some members may be aware that government consulted earlier in the year on planning committee reform, including what would be called a national scheme of delegation. So we have our local scheme of delegation within the Constitution at the moment. and there was draft guidance previously, draft regulations previously shared on that. They now have been sort of presented by the government yesterday in their final form, with the intention that they come into play on the 31st of October this year. What that means is that all councils then need to react to those to put in place our own changes to our own constitution to comply with the national scheme of delegation, so that we're making decisions in accordance with that from that date. If we were to make decisions after the 31st of October, not in accordance with the national scheme of delegation, then we may be at risk of making unlawful decisions. What this means in effect is that the government does want planning committees streamlined, dealing with the most important business, and making the right decisions on what really matters to communities. What that means in practice is that there are a range of types of planning application that will not go to planning committee at all under the national scheme of delegation. So that will include householder planning applications and minor development applications, such as applications for 9 homes or less. They will no longer be committee decisions. They will always be delegated nationally, and that's the kind of change that we'll need to make to our scheme of delegation. There will be a wider range of types of application that will be called Schedule 2 applications that will still have a level of subjective consideration applied to them around their significance, and there will be a responsibility that will sit with the chair of a planning committee and the head of planning to come to a decision as to whether they should progress to planning committee or not. It may be that we can still use functions like our referral panel for that as well. And there's also a change that planning committees should be no larger than 13 members. Now, our North and South planning committees are fewer than 13 members at the moment, but our strategic planning committee currently comprises of 19 members. So we are going to need to make some adjustments over the course of this process. We are going to see fewer applications that currently do come into committee, but we will still have that opportunity for the big important applications to potentially find themselves in that decision-making process. So the democratic process remains, the scrutiny remains, importantly, the level of attention that officers, consultees, etc. give remains, but we want to bring members on board with the process, particularly using strategic planning committee in July to engage on how we'll put that into place.
Thank you, Ben. That was much more eloquent. Can I have a seconder for this, please? Oh, hang on. So, as the chair, I am moving that the Cabinet notes overview and scrutinies committee's recommendations and agrees to refer them together with the Cabinet's comments this evening to the next meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee as the decision-making committee responsible for planning committee policy, procedures and processes. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Packard. All in favour? Okay, no, I think I've got any abstentions? Against? Sorry, Councillor Langdon Morris, I didn't see your hand rise on any of those occasions. Would you like to say something?
No.
So are you in agreement? Abstaining. Okay, so everybody else, I believe, was in support. One abstention. Thank you, Ben. Thank you to Mark and the rest of the planning team and everybody that was actually interviewed and took part in the PAS process. So item 6 is the appointment to outside bodies. So the outside bodies actually went to full council at our last full council meeting, and along with the other group leaders, we actually appoint members cross-party to the outside bodies. So I'm not going to go into all that detail, but the recommendations are that Cabinet, one, that councillors be appointed to those executive outside bodies listed in Appendix A for the 2026-27 municipal year, that the leader of the council be authorised to fill any outstanding vacancies left unfilled by the Cabinet. 3, that the leader be granted delegated authority to make any necessary changes to the membership of the executive outside bodies for the remainder of the 2026-27 municipal year. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Daly, thank you. Would any member of Cabinet like to debate? No, and as I said, this was fully debated at the annual meeting last month. Is there any member in the room wish to debate? Any member online wish to debate? Peter, your hand hasn't gone up, but I would just like to say Peter Byer is the leader of the Labour group, Mark Jepson is the leader of the Conservative group, and Paul, my deputy, is actually the leader of the Lib Dem group and with the Independents. I'd like to thank you for cross-party working with me to actually fill all these vacancies, which is hugely time consuming, and I want to thank every member of council for taking the time to sit on these bodies. It's really important that this council engages with outside bodies and provides that bridge between us and them so that we have a mutually agreeable and reciprocating relationship with people outside of our offices. Okay, for information, the Ipswich Strategic Planning Area Board, ISPA, will be changing over the coming weeks to cover the whole of Suffolk. Further information, including the board's new name, will be provided at a future meeting. Okay. So did no members of Cabinet, no members in the room, no members online wish to speak? Councillor Daly as the seconder, would you like to say anything?
Just to say that, yeah, this is important stuff. I have taken on some of it myself. And it's demanding in places, but it can also be very rewarding for us to be so engaged.
Thank you. So can I have a show of hands, please? Unanimous, thank you. Item 7, the Suffolk Economy and East Suffolk Thriving Economy Annual Review. So I sit on the Suffolk Business Board, and this is, I believe, a Suffolk County Council organisation that we have members of businesses, and we have 2 district and borough leaders who also sit on that board, and I was elected last year by the Suffolk district and borough leaders to be one of those representatives, along with my officer Paul Wood and Michelle Burdett, senior leadership team. We go through the agendas and the minutes, and they help me to understand a lot of the detail that goes into this report. I asked for this report to be brought to the Cabinet just for Cabinet's awareness, really, of what I get up to during the daytime. We meet regularly, and the information coming out of the board is far-reaching. It's to do with a lot of thriving economy, Suffolk economy. I have got a few notes. I'm just going to read a few bullet points here. So the purpose of this report is to update on the Suffolk Economy Annual Review and the East Suffolk Council Thriving Economy delivery. The recommendation is to note progress and endorse direction. Okay, so the overall position is that we have strong progress across the economy, skills and business resilience. Performance is mixed. Some ambitions are ahead of targets while others are lagging. There's continued delivery depends on partnership working and future funding. There's loads more I could say about this report. We have all had the report. I just wonder whether Paul Wood or Michelle Burdett would like to add anything to this from an officer's point of view. But before I do that, I just would like to thank them, because previously, as one of the leaders, I wasn't on this board 2 years ago, but since being on the board, my officers have been more collaborative than previous officers in other councils, which I probably shouldn't have said. But I would like to thank Paul and Michelle for working with the other district and boroughs across Suffolk, because they do contact their counterparts in those other councils and enable them to engage in this process. Even though I am the representative, I can then feed in the thoughts and aspirations of the other district and boroughs as well as our own. So I'd like to thank you for helping me in this position. Who would like to speak? Paul.
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, the Suffolk Business Board oversees the local growth plan, which is also known as the Suffolk Economic Strategy. So County Council mobilise the business board, but it is made up of, you know, constituent members from private sector, public sector, academia, voluntary, sort of a whole range of sort of stakeholders. And it was essentially set up following the dissolution of the LEPs that were previously there. So it's taken on a number of their functions. The paper sets out the sort of objectives and the targets that are set in the Suffolk Economic Strategy and how there's been performance against them. So I won't go through all them. They're in the paper. It's set out in sort of summary form. I think overall progress is above target. There are a couple of areas where they're behind, and that's recognised, and actions are being put in place to mitigate that and to get that more on target. In addition, we took this as an opportunity to look at the progress against the thriving economy, which we deliver in East Suffolk, but clearly contributes to economic well-being across the whole of Suffolk because of the importance of East Suffolk as a county regional economic driver, if you like. So that's all set out in the paper as well. So, and it does cover sort of, you know, key areas such as around attracting investment, enterprise and innovation, infrastructure and connectivity, and the sort of what we call talent identification and development. That's essentially skills and training. So some of these are real sort of foundational pieces that you need for economy, infrastructure and skills, I would say, but then more aspirational elements around sort of innovation and enterprise as well that are being driven. So this is really the, you know, as I say, in terms of the Suffolk Economic Strategy, that is what guides economic development across the county and overseen by the Business Board. We have the thriving economy, which is set within our strategic plan, and again is our local level ambitions around ensuring a thriving economy. But as I say, that sits within this wider growth. So, like I said, there's quite a lot of detail in there, quite a lot of statistics about what's been achieved, and then also, like I say, commentary against the sort of 9 priorities that sit within the thriving economy theme within the strategic plan. So, as you said, the report is for noting. I think it's probably it from me.
I suppose the only thing I would add to all of that is that it's really important that we recognise the district and borough economic development teams and the councils more broadly recognise the importance of the Suffolk Business Board when we move into, hopefully, an MCCA authority agenda, because everything that's in here will segue with Norfolk to develop and deliver some of the key responsibilities that the mayor at the MCCA will want to achieve. So by being at the table as district and boroughs through you, it's really important that we continue to engage, that we ensure that we hold the business board and the senior officers to account in terms of what goes into those documents and what is achieved. So I think it's a good piece of work, but we need to continue to be engaged and quite challenging to make sure that they continue to deliver for our area.
Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge that Neil MacDonald, who is the leader of Ipswich Borough Council, also sits on the board with me and represents districts and boroughs as well. So the recommendations are to note the Suffolk Economy Annual Review and note progress against the thriving economy priorities during 2025-26. Does any member of Cabinet wish to debate? Councillor Daly.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I haven't read this in detail, skimming through it. I can't seem to see any mention in there of our countryside. I can't seem to see any mention in there of our biosystems or sustainable agriculture or soil health or anything else in terms of the more long-term structural sustainability of our region and what makes our region special. And the reason that this region thrives is because of its character and its rural character. I can't see any mention in there of that at all. I might have missed it. You know, I come from Watford, right on the outskirts of London. There seems to be a desire to turn Suffolk into Watford. Nobody who lives in Suffolk wants it to turn into Watford. Endless industrialisation, endless traffic, endless pollution. There ought to be something in here about the quality of our region and the environmental and landscape and wildlife. You know, that they need to be part of the economic future, and they need to be valued. It's a shame that it's not in there.
Noted. I will take that comment back with me. I think we've got a meeting next week. Thursday this week. Thank you. Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, skills very topical at the moment, especially with NEETs and so on. And there's a lot of concern yesterday's meeting of the Waveney Health and Wellbeing Group about young people, and basically they're just not engaging. And we really need to get a task force together to get young people into work properly and address the fears about AI and that sort of thing. So can we get some sort of task force together and really crack this, especially in Lowestoft, which has historically got a problem with NEETs?
That's okay.
Just wondering, we had a Marmotplace advisory board yesterday, how all this ties into all the Marmotplace objectives. And Councillor Bevan, I mean, I did talk on there about the NEETs with Sir Michael Marmot, and how did Ireland go from, I think it was having almost the worst NEETs to the second best. And so I looked it up, and there is a pathway here. I actually have it here. I'll let you have a copy. So, but most of it comes from the government down. So I'm just wondering how we can align our Marmotplace principles to this thriving economy if we're not getting that help from the government.
Mr. Whitelock, did you have your hand up?
I did. I just wanted to support Councillor Daly's comment, actually, because this coastline, our coastline, brings in or is economically responsible for £700 million a year. It's extremely important to our economy, and Councillor Daly's right, actually, that needs to come into the thinking around a thriving economy. So yes, please, let's push that up the agenda.
Councillor Noble.
I'm going to say the same thing, I'm afraid. I'm going to agree with Councillor Daly that maybe there should be more specific things in there about our natural environment, which is in such threat and danger at the moment from everything that's happening in this district. And so I don't know if any of the officers can comment on that, and if there's anything else to say that, you know, that we've missed, and you can endorse that this is very much tied into this. I don't know. So I just wondered.
I am just going to ask Michelle. We were at a Marmotplace meeting yesterday, as was Councillor Candy. There was a lady, Julia Nix, and she was talking about a Navigator Pathway 500. Would you like to mention that?
I'm not. Is that the same as the youth hub? Yeah, okay, that's fine. So there's been some parallel conversations happening about skills. You make a very good point. Julia Nix from DWP now sits on the Lowestoft Place Board. We had a long conversation around the challenges, particularly in Lowestoft, although I recognise it goes across the board, both in terms of East Suffolk and nationally. And the intention is that there is some funding that DWP has to develop a youth hub in Lowestoft, and possibly in partnership with others in the area. And the intention is that that engages those hard to reach. Probably be more of a pilot, but it certainly acts as a pathway to some of the other skills challenges that we've got as a result of, you know, deprivation, current economic impact, and, you know, all the other things that we're aware of. So not sure if that's the same thing, but certainly that is definitely something that's happening at a local level, and the Lowestoft Place Board have taken that away as an action.
Thank you. Chris?
So yeah, the program I think you're referring to is called Coastal Navigators, and it's a sort of like an NHS-led sort of like partnership with the DWP, which we're also involved in, looking at employment opportunities for young people in coastal towns, focused on Felixstowe and Lowestoft predominantly. I think what we're trying to do with the Marmotplace work is join up the Coastal Navigators work with the youth hub, because there are lots of initiatives coming from different angles. And I think it goes to David's point about if everybody sort of like came together and focused sort of like on skills, we could make a bit more progress on that. So I think the thing about both Felixstowe and Lowestoft now have place boards. And I think skills is a focus in both of those areas. So there'll be a place-based focus coming to that as well. The other thing, just to the point made about natural environment, obviously this is a report about the thriving economy and the Suffolk growth strategy. There will, I understand, the environmental impact strategy is coming to the next cabinet meeting, so there'll be an opportunity to see how when we were looking at where the priorities sit, sort of like some of the sustainable growth aspirations sit in our environmental impact strategy, not necessarily in our thriving growth area. I can certainly talk about it. Refers to the visitor economy at quite a high level, and I sit on the local visitor economy partnership for Norfolk and Suffolk, and there's a huge amount of work going on there about sort of like natural visitor tourism and how we sort of like keep East Suffolk and Norfolk special, actually, in terms of attracting sort of like a cohort of visitors that are really interested in regenerative tourism, for example, as opposed to your traditional sort of like tourism offer. So if it's any reassurance, regenerative tourism is part of the local visitor economy partnership, and we're talking about the work they're doing today at a meeting about in the Brex. And looking at preserving the Brex and how that model might roll out across the whole of Norfolk and Suffolk.
Okay, and I'm not sure if anybody's already mentioned the Pride in Place programme. So we've got 20 million coming to Lowestoft and 20 million coming to Felixstowe, which is coming through the MPs, and they've set up community groups, and I believe they've chosen the chair from the community for both of those groups, and members of the community can engage with that process. Okay, are there any other members in the room wish to speak? Otherwise, Councillor, no. Online, any members online wish to speak? Councillor Byatt.
Thank you, Leader, and I certainly welcomed this document. I'm just a little wary because in there, something that features as one of the 9 ambitions is having a net zero economy. I'm not sure if you or your colleagues are aware of what has been put out by the County Council today about them abandoning a net zero at the county. So whether, that seems to be a new thing. It hasn't been through their cabinet or their full council yet, but an announcement was made today that they are going to abandon what they've already agreed to some time ago. So whether we need to be forearmed or forewarned about what they might be able to do to our ambitions here, I'm just troubled that there are outside influences which could affect all of the good work going on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byatt. Yes, I am aware. I have seen the press piece that Suffolk County Council's administration have decided to abandon net zero, and that is a concern to everybody. Okay, I haven't asked for a seconder, but I am going to propose the recommendations to note the Suffolk Economy Annual Review and note the progress against the thriving economy's priorities during 25-26. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Candy, thank you. Can we have a vote? All in favour, thank you very much. And again, I'd like to thank Paul Wood and Michelle Burdett for all their support in that role. Thank you. Item 8, Housing Regulation Quarterly Update to Cabinet. I would like to invite Councillor Bevan, Cabinet Member with responsibility for housing, to introduce the report. Thank you.
This report provides an overview of our statutory housing regulatory requirements and the progress we're making to meet them. Members will be aware of the context, including the C3 grading issued by the regulator for social housing in July 2025, following identified failings in the safety and quality standard. This report sets out the progress being made, including the development of our improvement plan and the steps officers are taking to strengthen compliance, improve service delivery and prevent recurrence of these issues. It also reflects our ongoing commitment to work constructively with the regulator. We remain focused on addressing these issues through our improvement plan and ongoing engagement with the regulator. This is one of the agreed quarterly updates to Cabinet. It is for information only with no decision required today. I welcome members' questions and feedback. The recommendation is that Cabinet notes the information contained within this report and endorses the work of the Housing Service, who are working towards ensuring the Council is compliant with the regulator of social housing consumer standards, including the safety and quality standard.
Thank you. Heather, would you like to say something about the Housing Improvement Oversight Board, please?
Thank you. Good evening, members. Yes, so we've now had our second iteration of the Housing Improvement Oversight Board. This board will meet on a quarterly basis and is chaired by our leader, and in her absence, Councillor Bevan as Cabinet Member for Housing. The proposal going forward is that we'll follow the similar format that we have tonight, which is where the quarterly update report that goes to the Housing Improvement Oversight Board will now come forward to Cabinet. Previously, we were writing a separate report to come forward to Cabinet, but now that we're producing quarterly reports for the Oversight Board, it makes more logical sense and reduces duplication and ensures that all members and the public are seeing exactly the same document as the Oversight Board is. So it really supports us with the transparency, influence and accountability standard. And going forward, we will also, following Cabinet reviewing the documents, be producing a tenant-friendly version, which will be updating on our website and on a regular basis, sharing more information with tenants about our progress on our improvement journey.
Thank you. And before I let you go, would you like to mention the peer review that we're going to be doing shortly?
Yes, absolutely. So we've invited the Local Government Association to complete a peer review of elements of the landlord service. Some members will recall that previously the authority had a peer challenge conducted by the LGA. I think it was 2022. This is a specific one for housing landlord services, and there's a number of sort of areas they look at specifically, and then you can also choose areas in which you want them to do a bit of a deeper dive. So they will ordinarily they will look at our sort of governance structures, they will look at our financial capability, and they'll look at the safety and quality of our stock. In addition to that, we've asked them to do a focus on neighbourhoods and also antisocial behaviour and domestic abuse, and looking at how we deal with some of those aspects as well. So we've got a really busy few days lined up at the end of June. A number of members have been invited to come along to sessions, a number of officers and also tenants. The peer team will spend 2 full days interviewing and meeting with everybody, getting as much information as possible. And then on the third day, I'll be producing a short update for corporate leadership team and certain members. We'll then follow up with a written report later. This all helps us in our continuous improvement journey and will help us with identifying other areas that we might want to do further work on. We know that tenant engagement is an area that we're really trying to build on. We know that it's something that we want to do more in, and we're really encouraging as many tenants as possible to volunteer and come forward to be part of our scrutiny, be part of our oversight, and ensure that we are delivering the best possible services to them. And so as part of the peer review, we're also asking them to come up with some suggestions of other ways that we can do that, because it can be challenging at times to get enough tenants to be willing to engage and participate in the groups. So yeah, last week of June that's taken place, and happy that we'll provide an update in the next quarterly report, if that's okay with you, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just checking SharePoint. Oh no, actually, what is on there? I'm just checking dashboards, because last year we launched the dashboards, and
we have.
Would you like to talk about the dashboards, or would Councillor Bevan like to talk about the back dashboards?
So we've been working really closely with our digital team. They've been creating a number of dashboards for us. At this stage, the dashboards are internal only, because they contain quite a lot of detailed information. We can drill down into individual property details. We have some high level detail that we do provide on the website around the quality of our stock and our tenant satisfaction measures, but we want to get to a position that we're sharing a lot more information. We've looked at other providers who do this and what kind of information they share, And we've shared that with our digital and data team, and they're now actively working on a number of different dashboards for us. And so there will be a kind of high level view that is shared with the public, and then the more detailed kind of property detail information that will be held internally. Whilst we've published the tenant satisfaction measures and the overall kind of safety and quality of our stock on a quarterly basis, we want to do it in more real time. We want it to be more accurate, and we also want to cover a number of other areas as well, such as the number of stage 1 and stage 2 complaints that we've responded to, how many of those have been upheld, the same with ombudsman inquiries, and also other examples of good practice that we're doing. For example, how many engagement events have we held, how many people are attending, a lot more information. We want to be as transparent as we possibly can be, so people can really understand the services that we're delivering.
Thank you, Heather. Any members of Cabinet wish to debate? Councillor Packard?
Are you able to explain to us why tenants don't want to engage with the council? They pay their money to the council. You'd think that they'd want to find out what that money's been spent on, and if necessary, make a protest.
Yeah, people are just busy. I think that's the main problem. But I don't know, have you got any insights, Hill?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think there's a number of factors. We've tried talking to tenants, trying to understand what some of the barriers are. I think there is a balance. You've got those that might work full time or have got young families, and it's trying to find the time in which to dedicate to doing it. It's not a paid role, it's voluntary. And so that can be a challenge. We will pay expenses, so we'll cover things like their travelling costs and reimbursement for those. But it is really challenging. So we've been looking at different ways. We're trying to develop almost like a suite of offers, so they can be as involved or as much or as little as they want to be, really. So we're trying to do more surveys. We're trying to understand a bit more about how we can encourage people to engage more. We've seen some real success last summer with our estate days and really getting an opportunity to talk to tenants. We've just held our first one at Normanston Drive, I think it was a fortnight ago, and we've got a programme of them again over the coming months. And so we'll continue to try and engage with tenants as much as possible. But I think it is difficult because we can't financially incentivise people to want to come on board and work with us. I know that private registered providers sometimes do that, but we don't have the sort of financial backing to enable us to do that. So we do look at ways we can encourage, whether that be shopping vouchers or, as I say, we do reimbursements. But it's something we continue to do, and that's where we're hoping the peer challenge may be able to give us some examples of things they've seen elsewhere that they've used in their own authorities, that they can maybe give us some good ideas that we can try and implement here in East Suffolk.
There's always the possibility some people might actually be happy with us and got no complaints. I think we have had some feedback on that.
Councillor Candy?
So probably being really thick here, but I thought peer review was where experts evaluated a single expert, or the experts evaluated each other on a level and shared information before it was published or shared. So this doesn't seem like that at all. So we're asking tenants to evaluate something where they can't have access to the information on the dashboard. So they're evaluating their own experience, which, as David Bevan has just said, might be about a complaint about rent or their own experience. So how do we turn that great idea of a peer review into something that actually encompasses more than the singular tenant's perspective?
I think there might be some confusion here. The peer review is run by the LGA, and tenant satisfaction is a separate campaign that we're getting involved with, finding out tenants' views. So,
There's two different things. There's two different things going here. So Heather and the team are doing tenant engagement. They do tenant satisfaction, and they go out and do tenant action days. The peer review is something entirely different, and this is something that Heather and the team have asked us to engage with, and the peers will come in from the LGA, and they will basically scrutinise us as an organisation and how we deal with situations. That'll be cross-party. I think Heather said some of the tenants will also be asked to engage, so it's something entirely separately, but this is a good platform to advertise that we were also doing that. Councillor Candy?
Yeah, so I did get that wrong and I apologise, but I think the question still arises though about how do we get that information to the tenants?
So we provide some information, as I said already, through dashboards, and we want to provide more. What we can't do is obviously provide any personal information that would breach the GDPR regulations. One of the things we have been doing is developing a complaints review group. So as part of that, we'll be working with a group of tenants who are willing to review complaints. But what we do as part of that is we redact the personal information. So they will understand what the nature of the complaint is, what led to the tenant complaining and how we dealt with it. But they won't know who the tenant is by name or what their address is. But they'll be able to review and scrutinise the way that we've dealt with it and give us recommendations for how they felt we could have maybe dealt with it better or differently. From their perspective as a tenant. So we are finding ways that we can engage with the tenants, but without breaching any of the sort of regulations and sharing any of that personal information. Does that answer your question?
It answers most of it. It didn't answer the bit about how the tenants find out all the information in the first place, but I'm okay to leave that for now.
Yeah, so we publish information on our website, and this, so following the report tonight, the intention is we'll publish more information on a quarterly basis about our progress on our improvement journey. But there is publicly available through the website a dashboard which shows how compliant our stock is and how we are performing against the tenant satisfaction measures. Tenant satisfaction measures are completed on a monthly basis, but we report on them quarterly through a company that we employ. And they pick a sample of tenants every month that they go out and ask the same questions every month. They're set out by government what the questions are, and it means that we can then benchmark ourselves against other local authorities. And by and large, the vast majority of them, we're in the median to upper quartile compared to the national average. So we're generally speaking, tenants are generally happy with the service that we provide. They think we provide a good service. Obviously, there's always going to be instances where that, not everybody feels that way. And two of the areas we identified were dealing with antisocial behaviour and our neighbourhoods and communities. And that's why we've asked the peer team to do a specific focus on those areas, because we know our tenant satisfaction measures are slightly lower there. If I can just add as well, so the peer team is made up of a number of different people, including a member who has got experience of being a portfolio holder for housing, a director of housing who's got a C1 regulatory judgment with the regulator of social housing. We've also got a section 151 officer who's supporting, who will look at it from a financial perspective, and a number of other peers as well. So it's a broad range of individuals. We review all of the CVs and we check that we think they're the most appropriate people for the peer review and that they've got the right knowledge, skills and expertise to add value to what it is that we're trying to achieve.
Thank you. Any other members? No, any other members present in the room? No, any members present online? Councillor Byett.
Thank you, and David, thank you for a very thorough report. As it is mentioned in here, and I'll be very parochial, I just wondered if we have any update on the progress or the situation regarding St Peter's Court, because it does have other implications beyond just housing. As you mentioned in here, it's part of the thriving economy. Obviously, if there's nothing to update, that's fine. But I'd be remiss of me not to ask on behalf of my ward colleagues. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll move over to Heather for the detail, but we're getting there slowly, Peter. I mean, the asbestos is also being dealt with. That takes time, and we are getting there. I'm told we might be able to act next year. So we'll see. What do you reckon, Heather? Next year?
Thank you, Councillor Byett. Yeah, so we're making good progress now with St Peter's Court. We've appointed a company who have started to remove the asbestos. It's known as a soft strip, where I've seen pictures where the flats are basically completely back to just the bare brick walls. The asbestos, a lot of it was removed when we did the fire safety works a few years ago, and they're not finding significant amounts, which is really positive. And so we're now looking at having the rest of the soft stripping done, which will then speed up the actual demolition process. So we're optimistic that the actual demolition will commence in early part of next year, once we've got the rest of the soft stripping done and the final aerial telecommunications masts removed from the roof. They've recently received planning consent for a new mast, and so we're all on target for that to come off later in the year. And by next year, the building should be coming down. And we're currently exploring a potential option for the future of the site, which I can't say too much about in a public forum at the moment, but something will hopefully come forward in the not too distant future for us to look at an alternative use for the site.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from members online? Thank you, everybody. Can I have a seconder for this, please? Councillor Daly, thank you. Councillor Daly, I don't believe you've spoken. Councillor Whitelock, would you like to speak? Councillor Daly, you're going to second it. Would you like to speak?
No, I think everything's been covered, thanks.
Councillor Bevan, anything else?
Yeah, I just congratulate the department. This is a mammoth task, and we're really getting there. So it's going to be really good. We are also, increasing our housing stock. We've got a snip of 5 houses in Ilkeshaw, St Lawrence, out of that slush fund you gave us of 5 million. So we're spending it well, and we'll be bringing a business case to you soon.
I'd like to thank Heather and the team. This is a huge shift forward. The council's made huge progress in the last couple of years with the suggested peer review, the housing improvement advisory oversight board. Sorry, I keep getting the name wrong. Yeah, and the new houses that the council are building. Well done to the team, Heather. Thank you. So, can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you very much. All in favour. So we have one set of exempt minutes from the meeting which took place on the 21st of April 2026. If there are no amendments, we can accept these outside of closed session. If there are any amendments, I will need to go into closed session. Okay. Can I have a proposer to accept those minutes? Councillor Bevan and a seconder. Councillor Whitelock, thank you. Show of hands. Thank you very much. This will end the meeting. The next meeting is Tuesday, the 14th of July, 2026 at Riverside. I'd like to thank all the officers and members and those online. Thank you very much.